Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we're talking about everything coming from Age of Overlord, and particularly what's going to matter the most as it pertains to the competitive scene. There's a ton of different angles you can go about looking at a set, whether it's the collector side of things, the financial side of things, if you're trying to turn a profit here. But today we're just focusing on what's coming out of this set that is brand new to the TCG, that's going to adjust the format, going to push the format in a new direction, because, man, there's a lot. There's new archetypes, there's legacy support, and there's new generic cards in this set. This set has it all if you are a competitive player looking for new stuff for the format. So, without further ado, let's just jump into it. We got a ton of stuff to go through. I like to break these up into 3 different categories, just like I mentioned: new archetypes, legacy support, and brand new generic cards. So let's start off with the new archetypes that I think will have the most impact here. So starting off here, Imsati, Glory of Horus, and just Horus in general. This engine is very good, a very good graveyard-based engine that just puts multiple 8s on the field, and also gives you grindability. Only weakness for this is that it leaves up their continuous spell, but it is a really good graveyard-based engine that I think a handful of decks will actually see playing with. And I think the thing to keep in mind as well is, just based on how the TCG generally works, I expect Horus to see more play in the TCG than it did in the OCG. So I would keep a big eye out on that one. Next up, you have the Dia Bellstar engine, or if you want to call it the Sinful Spoils engine. It's incredibly good. It's going to see play immediately in the top tier levels of competitive play. That's going to be a huge part of this for sure. So keep an eye on it. I think we're going to see it be played in Rescue Ace out the gate. I think we could see it played in stuff like Infernoids. This engine helps Infernoids kind of climb back up into relevancy, because the most important thing that this archetype does is it gets you this card, Sinful Spoils Snake Eye. This card essentially just emergency teleports out any level 1 fire monster from your deck. So for Rescue Ace, it's oh my gosh, what do you even... Hydrant, jeez, oh my god, I'm blanking so hard. For something like Infernoid, that would be Decatron. There are different targets out there. There are probably other decks as well. I think the Fire King structure deck is going to have a really good level 1 to summon off of this, and that's a really cool connecting piece for those decks. Plus, this engine is just good. It's just another assisting generic engine to add another layer to a deck you might already be playing, so keep that in mind. On top of that, Snake Eye is its own archetype, and I think it's pretty interesting. It's definitely, at this point, the most underwhelming of the 3, but I've already picked up mine on pre-sale because I knew this is going to be one of those decks where Konami gives them a second wave, a third wave, or whatever, and then this engine takes off. This engine becomes its own deck, whatever, and it's actually right up on there. So, again, this engine not only gives you access to the spell that summons any level 1 fire from deck, which helps with this engine, but you have stuff like Ash, which on normal summon just adds a level 1 fire monster from deck to hand. So there's really good synergy there for certain engines that are fire-based as well. And I think it may not be amazing right out the gate, but I do think it's something to keep in mind for a little bit past this format. It could come up big. Okay, that's it for the new archetypes. Moving on to the legacy support that I think is really interesting. Let's start off with Visas Samsara. This is the single most important card for the Visas lore. This guy's a normal summonable monster that counts as Starfrost while on the field or in the graveyard, which is really cool because he also has 1500 attack, 2100 defense, so he fits both material requirements for the extra deck guy, the fusion guy that you can essentially, like, you can kind of ABC Dragon Buster, summon him out really easily. Essentially, he can count as Visa Starfrost or the stat line monster that he needs, which is really cool. Also, stuff like for Scareclaw, that can, like the Link one, that can just be made with Starfrost if you want. Also, this guy being engraved makes it so that Link one can just come back for free. It makes that way more consistent, and in the form of a level 4 is pretty cool. So it helps out with certain combos for those decks. Definitely a cool card to keep in mind. It's also a tuner, so it helps facilitate some synchro lines as well. I think it's going to apply to a couple of those different decks. Scareclaw, potentially Manadium, but those are definitely the 2 biggest ones for sure. Okay, so there we go. Moving on, we move to Arius the Labyrinth Butler. This is a really cool card. I want to say I a little bit underplayed it when it came out. I kind of poo-pooed it a little bit. I'm still not totally convinced that it's an absolute staple or anything in Labyrinth, but depending on the build, I do think it's actually an interesting card. It essentially, like, going second, actually not even just going second, but you can pitch it to, like, set a normal trap from hand, and it can immediately be activated that turn. So it's rawly a neg one, but it's speeding up a trap deck that can be valuable if the trap you're speeding up is worthwhile. So still an interesting card. I'm not sure if the neg one's worth it, but it is an interesting card, and I'm going to pick mine up just in case. Next up, Vanquish Soul. They get a new card, Zhao Long. They also get a new trap. The new trap sucks. I don't think you're going to play it at all. But Zhao Long is pretty cool. He extends himself if you use any effect that like reveals a card in hand to like activate. So he jumps out pretty easily. He's decently beefy. And then he can reveal any 2 fires to add just any Vanquish Soul card from deck to hand. That's really cool because it adds monsters or spells or traps. So not one or the other, but just either. Is really cool. So this card definitely adds some consistency and power to the deck that it definitely was definitely looking for. So definitely not mad at this card at all. I think it's actually pretty decent for them. Next up, Baphomet, the mythical king of Phantom Beast. This is a new assisting fusion card for the Chimera engine. Not too much else in this set for that engine. People might have thought we would get more a little sooner, but not quite yet. The biggest thing about this guy is that when he's fusion summoned, he can just send any beast, fiend, or illusion monster from deck to grave. So this adds synergy with any beast, fiend, or illusion card or engine that might be a little bit generic or graveyard based, which is really cool. It also has the ability on the opponent's turn to quick effect to banish itself to summon back a banished beast, fiend, or illusion. So really good synergy with those types. Decent card overall. I could easily see some kind of like Tri-Brigade Chimera build where this card becomes pretty nice in that kind of build, or maybe there's something else. I don't know, but that's what's on the top of my head for this card as of right now. Moving on, Supreme King, or the Zark cards. In the OCG, this is probably the most played Pendulum deck. They always have a little bit of Pendulum action going on, and this is the main one right now. Summoning Zark is pretty good. Plus, I believe this deck's combos don't need to, like, super turbo, like, summon a bunch of times, summon a million times, do whatever. Sometimes it's just like, let me just set up the trap, and, like, if I can set up the trap, like, we're good to go. Which kind of helps for their format because of Max C and stuff. So it for a Pendulum deck, plays better under Max C, which is nice. But it's cool. It's another good engine. It's another good way to play Pendulums. We'll see if it actually sticks here. Kind of still is going to have the same weaknesses that every Pendulum deck shares, but hopefully that's a little bit mitigated with the new engine. We'll see. Tistina. Honestly, this one's more in the air than anything because at least with most of these other cards, we've seen them shown off in the OCG to a certain degree, whether it's Rogue or Meta or whatever. But Tistina is TCG exclusive, so we actually don't know much about how much this second wave of support is going to do for them. But they get 7 new cards here. It's pretty good. There's some cards that I like. There's some cards that I'm like, I don't even know if I want to play this, but it does help Tistina. Do I think it's all the way there? Probably not. I feel like they just like don't do enough, don't have enough starters. They're just missing like a little bit of everything. I feel like they're just underwhelming in most categories, but they do have some effects should you be able to set them up that are pretty strong, but you got to get them set up, and that's the biggest question about this archetype right now. So we will see where that goes, but I just wanted to highlight it here just in case. TG has been unplayable for years and years and years. They do get a nice little wave of support here. I think they have some plays that are decent, but I think the bigger question here is just they feel like they're super fragile. Like 1 hand trap, especially 2 or more hand traps, and this archetype cannot play through it. Seems pretty scary, but I don't know. They have a level 1 fire monster that's a 1-card play, so that kind of helps that the new Diabellstar engine is out here, so this is another deck that can kind of be helped out with that. But they feel like they're 1 Ash Blossom away from like passing turn in most scenarios. So we'll see. Feel free to prove me wrong or debate that, but I still think like they could be on the cusp of like maybe a regional topping deck, but nothing more than that, in my opinion. Next up, Ogdoadic. They get a new boss monster in the main deck as well as a new spell. The spell is actually crazy. It gives you like 1 million tokens. But all in all, they're just nice tools for Ogdoadic. Do I think Ogdoadic's there yet? No. Would I be surprised if it's able to top a regional now? No. I do think they actually have some tools. They definitely have some weaknesses, but the tools are actually decent that they have. I do think Reptiles still sit in that same spot I've always been waiting. Now, they're just a little bit better now, but if they get a Link 2 that's Hieratic Seal of Heavenly Spheres for Reptiles, I am in on them. In. Okay, so that's it for all the legacy support that I think like has any sort of relevancy. There's a couple of other ones out there as well, but I just don't think they're that relevant competitively speaking. They're cool if you're a fan of the deck that got support. I just don't think they really matter that much if you're truly trying to like play something that's at least rogue or better. Okay, into the generic stuff. This set has a ton of really nice generic cards. We're going to talk about them here. Let's start off with the less important ones, and we'll get to the more important ones later on. For the main deck, Darkhold Dragon. Interesting card. He can't be destroyed by card effects, and if any monster on the field is destroyed by card effect that's not targeted, you can special summon this card from grave or hand. And then if this card's special summoned during the end phase, you can add a Dark Hole from deck to hand. So pretty cool card. It seems very matchup based for sure. But depending on the format, depending if certain stuff like Lightning Storm, Raigeki, whatever is like really popular, this could be like an anti-side type card to kind of just help you out in certain scenarios because he is kind of a beast. So pretty particular card, but I think he's pretty niche, so we'll see. Next up, we have Burning Dragon, a new TCG or OCG import. If your opponent has 2 or more monsters, he jumps on the field, and then when he's summoned that way, he can pitch a spell from hand to wipe all spells and traps off the field. So kind of like a back row hate card, but he's decent attack, big body, level 8 body. He actually could come up as a side deck card in particular formats, definitely. These guys are crazy. So these guys are TCG exclusives. Gen and Ken, they summon each other. I talked more about these when they got revealed a couple days ago. If you summon Gen, he summons Ken to the opponent's field. If you summon Ken, he summons Gen. They have an effect that triggers on the opponent's field as their effect. So it turns on stuff like Thrust and Talents, as well as triggering certain other cards that it just exists for archetype stuff like Kashtira Unicorn, stuff like Tier Limit Havness, right? Being able to just then summon her in mill 3 kind of lets you get things going pretty well. Honestly, there's definitely some potential there for sure. You know, and they let you either draw 2, discard 1, or rip a card out of the opponent's hand. It's pretty nasty. They're pretty interesting cards. I think we're going to see them see play in some particular decks going forward pretty quickly here. Pit Knight Philly, getting into the extract monsters. This card's cool. It's another Pit Knight next to Early. Early's actually a pretty good card. This one's not terrible either. If it's summoned to a zone a link monster points to, you can target a monster you control with 1500 or less attack. It can make a second attack each battle phase, and it does deal double damage. So, you know, it helps you really push, like at least, like it can target itself, I believe. So then this card by itself deals 6,000 damage right there, which is pretty cool. If it's under something with 2,000 attack already, like you can just OTK, which is pretty cool. And then if it's destroyed, it comes back on the next turn, which is cool. Okay, Exceed armors. These are really cool. Really cool Exceed support, kind of in the same line as Zeus, like generic ways to like plop decent cards on top of monsters. So you can just make Torpedo, but you can also just plop Fortress on any rank 3 or 4 monster. And then from there, you can just plop Night Ray Lancer or Dark Knight Lancer, which is pretty nice. So Armor Fortress also searches an Armored Exceed card. So there's a new trap in this set as well that just gives you an interruption, essentially. So it is a way that if you can just make this guy, he can draw you a card. Then this guy can search you Armored Exceed. So you've gone +2, and then you make this guy, and you're able to take an opponent's monster. So you have an interruption plus a draw just by making a rank 3, which is pretty cool. It's an interesting engine. You'll probably have to play Armored Exceed, the trap, which is kind of a brick outside of this engine. So that's the one tough part. Plus they take some extra deck slots, but I don't know. It could be an interesting engine to play in certain decks for sure. I think it's definitely worthwhile looking into for sure. Infernal Flame Banshee. This is just Gallant Granite, but for Pyros. It's a generic rank 4 that searches or Foolish as a Pyro monster. Also, if this card is banished and you control a Pyro, you can just summon this back from banished, which is pretty cool. That it can just do that, so that's pretty nice. Manadium, Trisukta, I almost threw this in Legacy support, but to be honest, this is more of a generic Synchro support tool than it is a Manadium card. Manadium will definitely use this, but I think this card will see play down the line as well anyway. It's just one of those really good Synchro climbing tools. When this card's Synchro summoned, it can target a level 2 Tuner Engrave, special summon it, and it's a level 6, so it's perfect level-wise, right? You would make this with a level 2 Tuner and a level 4. That's pretty common for synchro decks that make 6s. So just reborn it, negate its effects, but you just get that body back and you're able to just keep spamming the board. So that's pretty good. Next up, Exceed the Pendulum, a new Pendulum support card. This card goes right in line with Beyond the Pendulum. It's a pretty good card. You can special summon a Pendulum monster from hand or grave in defense position on the opponent's turn, as long as its level fits in between your scales. And when it's link summoned, you can add a face-up Pendulum monster from your extra deck back to your hand. So it kind of sets up that quick effect, but also just gets you back more material, especially if you can make this pre-Pendulum summon. Then it's even better. So that's pretty cool. It's honestly a good card. I don't know if I don't think it's enough to move the needle for pendulums, because while this is nice for pendulums, I don't think it particularly helps with the exact weaknesses pendulums already have, but it's still a cool card if you're a pendulum player for sure. Next up, we have Superstar Slayer Typhon Sky Crisis. This card is crazy. While it's on the field, all monsters with 3,000 or more attack have their effects negated, so he's just skill drain for them. Once per turn, you can attach material to return one monster on the field to the hand. That's non-targeting. And he can just be overlaid on any monster as long as your opponent special summoned 2 or more monsters from the extra deck during the turn or turn after. Whether during your opponent's last turn or this turn, if they have summoned twice from the extra deck, you can just pretty much plop this on any monster with the highest attack on your field and then get those bonus effects. Now, once you summon him, you're restricted out of special summoning for the rest of the turn, but I still think the value for this card in like mid-range board state, grindy board states, this card's actually pretty insane. So you have to respect it, I think. And it's a pretty good counter for Zeus, because like as long as you're okay with not summoning anymore, you could summon something and your opponent might be like, I can't fire Zeus yet here. And then if you just overlay for Typhon, then you're able to just like immediately out the Zeus, because it's negated, it can't do anything, and then you just bounce it. Cleared. Done. It's really nasty. And then lastly, we have SP Little Knight. This card's the card of the set, I think. This and Typhon, to be honest, are probably cards that every competitive player should be looking at getting at least one copy of. SP Little Knight's crazy. It's a new generic Link 2 on Link Summon. If it used any monster from the extra deck, you can target a card on the field or either graveyard and banish it. And then it also has a bonus effect that if any effect is activated by your opponent, it can target 2 face-up monsters on the field, including one you control, and banish them both until the next turn. So it can like Farfa tag out kind of thing. Tag itself out plus banish an opponent's monster. So that's just another interruption. So it's really, really cool. It becomes like IP Masqueraina's best new target. It makes IP better than it's ever been before. It's a really, really good card. And even if you're not playing with IP, any deck that makes like an easy extra deck monster, just to be able to go into this, even just going second to banish something and then have the ability to like be annoying and tag out and interrupt them even more, is legitimately powerful. So you definitely have to have your eyes on this card, because these are the 2 cards that I think like a lot of extra decks will just start seeing these 2 like everywhere. For most of these other generic cards, they're going to be particular on decks, but I think like a lot of decks are just going to be teching one or two of these in each of them. So there you go. That's everything I think is important if you're a competitive player for Age of Overlord. Let me know in the comment section down below if you think I missed anything, as well as what you're looking most forward to from this set. Are you looking for a new archetype that you want to play? Are you looking for legacy support for a deck you've always loved? Or the generic cards? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below on all that stuff down there. I'll see you guys in the next one, though. Thank you so much for watching. As always, subscribe to the channel for more stuff from me down the line. See you in the next one. Peace.